Okay. So hopefully we've all got some good ideas for settings. Now, like I was saying with the Ghost of Goswater, and I had the concept, and then I had the setting, and that's when things started happening. I think very often we don't just need one good idea to create something. And actually here I'm talking about all sorts of creative work. It could be making a film or a piece of art or composing a piece of music. We don't just need one good idea to start off that process. I think very often we need two ideas. And when you've got two ideas, they can kind of spark against each other like flints, and that's when you get these exciting flames of creativity flickering away. So we're going to add another ingredient. So you've got your setting, keep your setting in mind, and I would like you to add one of these supernatural characters. These are all kind of folklore, fairy tale sort of characters. So to your setting, you choose one of these. You could have a black cat. I think he looks like a bit like a witch's cat. You can decide if he talks or not. Or there's swans in the background. Maybe you could have a swan. We have this witchy character. Now, she's actually a character from Slavic folklore, a character called a Baba Yaga. And there's the story. Anyone read The House with Chicken Legs? Yeah, lots of you. Brilliant. So the Baba Yaga character is a sort of a witch-like character, and she kind of escorts the souls of the dead. We've got a knight, maybe a ghost of a medieval knight. There's a bit of mist behind him. We've got this character. This is from an old Dulac painting, which I love. And I think she's either trying to catch a star or something is floating from her hands. We've got a unicorn, but not like a fluffy unicorn. He's quite a scary unicorn. We've got a little boy over here. Up to you if he's a real sort of lost child or could be a ghost. Actually, it could be a girl. You can decide. And we've got a white stag, a girl riding a white stag. And then we've got this kind of monkey bat creature, moth bat, scary monkey bat moth creature. Let's just call him Dave. You've got Dave. All right, that's Dave. Okay, so I would like you now to choose one of those elements that you feel will work with your setting, okay? And then let's just see. This is an experiment. It's very exciting. Let's just see if some sparks start flying when you add one of these random elements to the setting that you've chosen. And then, when you're ready, let's start having some hands up, and you can tell me what your setting is, what your character is. Let's go over here. Have you got a mic? Thank you very much. Let's go over here. Thank you.
My setting is like a dark oak wood forest with lots of snow.
Yeah? Oh, wonderful.
Like on a mountain.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of going with the white stag because I think it would look really good.
Oh,
it would
beautiful.
create like an invisible feature.
Oh, I can see the front cover already. Oh, how wonderful. So we've got a snowy forest with the white stag, a mysterious white stag, maybe a magical white stag appearing. So are you thinking like a fantasy sort of a story? Or?
Yeah, most of my stories are fantasy.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Well done. Brilliant. Okay, let's have another idea. Can we go to this gentleman here? Thank you. Hi.
Well, I'm honestly thinking about how maybe there's like a mountain setting with our dear all-powerful Dave as a monster terrorizing a small village in the mountains with no way down. And then the hero, maybe it's a hiker, they come up to a village like to get supplies.
Oh, we're going horror, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going horror. Okay, what's your name? Andre, that's fantastic. So we've got mountains, we've got a remote setting, the mountains, and we've got this terrifying creature. Is he real? Oh, the people tell the stories about, and then maybe people start going missing, and then the hiker goes into the mountain. Oh, it's a horror story waiting to happen. That is brilliant. You need to come up with a title, Andre. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go to my friend over here.
Like a graveyard, like in a church, and then we have Dave. We have this lone boy. And what's that white?
Mom, we could have this as
the unicorn and the Dark Knight.
They're all there. It's a party. It's a sinister party. So we've got a graveyard, yeah? Like a lost child. Oh, and the lost child. Okay, fantastic. What are you thinking? Horror? Is that what genre you're going with? Mystery, horror mystery. Sorry, fantastic. Okay, let's go. Who said?
So actually, I was thinking the mother and father are gonna kick out a girl because she did something stupid.
She's got characters and plot and everything. Yeah?
She did
Are we in
something.
a desert?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a desert.
No.
Oh, no, you've changed your mind.
No, she's gonna be in a village. The parents kicked her out, and then she runs away to a desert.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a sign who changed it like to a quicksand that this is the right way, but that's the quicksand. She goes in the quicksand. She sinks down.
She's sunk in the quicksand.
Yeah.
Is it a thriller?
No, it's like horror.
It's a horror. Horror. You guys. Okay. Could we? Let's have someone over here. Could we have this person here, please? There's a lot of horror.
It's a dark wood
Yeah.
with Dave,
Yeah.
and everyone who steps in it never comes out because Dave kills them, and it's a horrible ending.
It's going to be a horrible ending.
Yeah, and
Blood everywhere.
and everyone who goes there will just die.
Okay, a tragedy. Okay, fantastic. Let's hear from one of these ladies over here, please. Can we have a round here? Shall I swap with you again? There we go. Okay, go on then. What's your setting?
So it's in a mountain,
Yeah.
and there's a river.
Into the mic, sweetheart. A
Um,
mountain and a river.
yeah, and every day there's this swan that goes to the mountain, and he has a message to deliver to this girl.
A swan that goes to the mountain with a message. This is like a fairy tale. This is beautiful. Go
and
on.
the girl goes to the mountain when she's like she wants to relax,
Yeah.
but when
Don't. Dave's not going to kill her, is he?
No.
Okay, good. Yeah, go on.
when she goes back home, the mountain disappears and she can't see it. So only when she goes there she can see it.
Oh, it's a magical mountain. Oh, beautiful. I love it. Wonderful, wonderful. Let's go. Can we go to this lady here, please? Hi.
Hi. My setting is like one of the mountains you'd find in Thailand, like covered in mangrove.
Oh, beautiful.
And then at the top there's a ruined temple, and it's guarded by a person kind of like Baba Yaga.
Yeah, okay, so a
Kind of like that.
witch-like sort of a character guarding the ruins of this ancient temple in the mangrove mountains. Oh my golly, you need a title for this. Beautiful. In fact, it could be the Mangrove Mountains. The ghost, the witch of the Mangrove Mountains. Oh, write it, please write it. Guys, these ideas are wonderful. I think maybe just two more. Is there any, I've heard from each school, haven't I? Let's go to this guy here, because his friends are confident that this idea is a winner. This, yeah, you. This chap in the middle here, please. Have we got a mic? Can we get a mic to this guy in the middle? So, sorry, this chap in the middle. Sorry, pass it along. Thank you. Thank you.
So it's like London 2050. Dave is...
London 2050.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going future.
Sorry, 3050.
3050, very
Yeah.
future.
And Dave is possessed.
Dave-
attempted to possess everyone.
Yeah, I can
And,
see why your
well,
friends like this. Yeah,
this
go on.
One boy, he is trying to escape London
Yeah.
and just run away as far as he can.
So it's an apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic, dystopian horror adventure.
Basically.
Yeah, what's your name?
Ilan.
Ilan?
Ilan, yeah.
Is that the name of your main character too?
No, we'll name him Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy, the adventures of Jimmy. Okay, and let's just go to that guy who had the mic before because I felt terrible taking the mic away from him. Okay, I think this is going to be our last one. We could do this all day. These ideas are brilliant. Okay, yeah, sorry, that chap here.
So my idea is basically, it's a bit basically it's Dark Knight
Yeah.
in
Good start.
1930 of Liverpool.
In what, sorry, when?
In Liverpool, 1930.
In Liverpool, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay. In
there's-
1930?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, go on. I love it already.
It's midnight and
Yeah, it's
and
midnight.
and a
Go on. Oh, he's building it up. He's building the tension.
And
Go on.
in an abandoned house, a little boy called Eric.
Yeah.
He enters, and everything starts falling down. And then the unicorn comes.
And then there's a unicorn.
Yeah, that one there.
So we've got like an industrial, is it like an industrial sort of, are we talking like the shipyards here, and then there's a unicorn, a magical, I love it.
The one behind you.
I love it. So it's like a kind of, we've got a kind of, sort of magical realism, industrial, it's very David Armand kind of a thing. Beautiful. These guys are brilliant. Actually, we can't listen. I would wish we could hear all of the ideas, but perhaps if you come and say hi to me afterwards, you can tell me your brilliant ideas. Those ideas are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And do you see what I mean? When you put two ideas together, things start happening. It's quite exciting. You get a kind of a chemical reaction happening in your imagination. So I want to talk to you a bit more about places we can get ideas from. And whether we are aware of it or not, subconsciously perhaps sometimes, we draw inspiration from all the stories that we've experienced in our lives, the books we've read, the films, the TV that we've seen. But I wanted to give you permission, in a way, to do that, to borrow these ideas. And of course, I'm not saying, copy and paste that paragraph and, yeah, I wrote that, yeah, honest, I did write that, because that's stealing, that's plagiarism, we don't do that. But what I'm saying is we can use existing texts as a jumping off point. So you can write, you could use the beginning of a story as the end of your story. Or you could use the end of a book as the beginning of your own book, and you can write the sequel. Or you can use a character and take them out of that story and place them in a different world. Or you can take a moment, a scene, and do a what if. What if it didn't end in that way? What if it ended differently? And that can be really, really fun. So I get inspired by a lot of other literature. Because I'm a bookworm, my head is crammed with other people's stories. I can't escape them. So I end up kind of bouncing around with them. And this is a poem. Actually, I used to use this poem when I was a teacher because I love this poem. It's a really weird little poem. Overheard on a Salt Marsh by Harold Munro. And the whole poem is a conversation. It's a dialogue between this greedy goblin character here and this beautiful nymph. And the goblin is begging the nymph for her pretty beads, for her pretty glass beads. He's saying, give them me, give them me. And the nymph is saying no. And he's a bit like a kind of, like Gollum in Lord of the Rings. He's a bit like that kind of a character, sort of greedy, avaricious, and he wants things for himself. And so this was one of the ingredients that sparked my story, Sisters of the Lost Marsh. I loved the idea of this goblin kind of crawling out of the slime of the salt marsh. And he became sort of transformed, if you like, into a fairy tale character within my story. And he's called the Marsh King. And he controls people by fear. Now, some of you I know might know this is in my first book. I think particularly NLCS, you guys might know. Some of you guys might know this book. So this book has got a lot of literary inspiration behind it mainly because my main character, Henrietta, is a bookworm. So she sees the world around her. She kind of sees that world through the lens of the stories that she loves. And, of course, when you know a story and you know how it ends, there's something quite safe about that, and a terrible thing has happened in Hen's life, and she doesn't know how her own story is going to end. So she kind of finds comfort in these stories that are familiar, and she sort of processes what's happening around her through the lens of these fairy tales that she loves. Anyone recognize what this fairy tale is? Rumpelstiltskin, very good, well done, Rumpelstiltskin. And this was an illustration from one of the Ladybird books that I read when I was little, and I still have sort of nightmares about this particular illustration, and I've never quite been able to work out what it is about that. So this is where the goblin, he's trying to kind of trick the queen out of giving up her baby. I think it's something to do with his legs. He's got like skinny little stripy legs, and then his little pointy shoes. There's something about his little pointy shoes that are really sinister. I don't know why. And of course, Keats' poetry. This is one of the most beautiful poems, I think, in the English language. It always makes me cry when I read it. So John Keats' Ode to a Nightingale. And this story, which is a story perhaps you might come to in a few years' time, The Yellow Wallpaper. It's quite a dark, sort of a gothic story, and it's about a medical treatment that really happened in the 19th century, early 20th century, called the Rest Cure. And it was a medical treatment, supposedly, used particularly for women, and particularly for women who were suffering from postnatal depression, or any sort of depression, but particularly postnatal depression after they'd had a baby. And what would happen is the baby would be taken away from them, and they would be locked away in a room by themselves. And the theory was their poor overheated brain needed some time and some quiet to kind of calm down. And they were locked away in a room by themselves with nothing, no books, no pen and paper, obviously no TV, no phones, nothing at all to stimulate themselves, to stimulate their imaginations. And I mean, that's a punishment in prisons, isn't it? That's called solitary confinement. And you can imagine if you're already feeling lost and frightened and confused, how much worse that could make things. Now, this story already existed. I wasn't going to rewrite this story, but I thought, what if? What if I wasn't the woman locked inside that room? What if I was her 12-year-old daughter on the other side of the locked door? And I'd been told I couldn't see my mum. And if I tried to see my mum, if I even tried to talk to my mum, I could make her worse. And how terrifying that would be. So that was one of the what-ifs that began this first book, Nightingale Wood. And art is a really, really rich resource when you're creating stories. So I'm a visual person, and I love when I'm researching a story, I love to gather around me lots of different images. So these are two of the images that inspired Sisters of the Lost Marsh. Now this is a modern print of the marshland, and in this one I love the way the sunlight, that low sunlight, is catching the water and the wildflowers. And this one is a very, very old watercolour of the Romney Marsh, and in this one I love the scale of it, how low the horizon is, how huge the sky. How huge the sky. And in places like this, very flat place, featureless places by the sea or somewhere like this on the marshlands where you get a huge sky, it can be very beautiful, but it can also be really intimidating. Because if that huge sky is full of storm clouds, it can make you feel so tiny, so vulnerable. Now, both of these images I have kind of translated into words in my story. And that's why art can be so valuable when you're creating a story. You translate it into words. And I could pinpoint in my story the two scenes where I use these pieces of art. Now, my second book, Our Castle by the Sea, which is a wartime adventure story, that began with a painting. This is a painting, a Second World War painting, done from a lighthouse in Eastbourne on the south coast of England, the Beltute Lighthouse. It's a painting by Eric Revilius. And I was just at an art exhibition, and I saw this painting, and I had a moment. Do you know the film Mary Poppins? Do you know the bit where they jump into the chalk pictures, and they're kind of there in this magical world in the chalk paintings? I had a moment like that, actually in the art gallery, and I felt like I was inside the world of this painting. I felt like I was there, standing there in the lantern room of a lighthouse looking out over the sea, and I was bewitched by that feeling of the air and the sky and the sea, and I thought, I want to write a story told from this perspective. And that's how that story began. Now, something else that we can do, which you guys have already started to do with your own stories, which is so exciting, is we can go delving and rummaging through old stories, weird old stories, folklore, the folklore perhaps of our home countries, because it's such a rich resource for us to find ideas within. And there's a particular bit of folklore in this story that I use, and that's the idea of a will-o'-the-wisp. Now, where you've got, it's a little bit of science for you. You weren't expecting that, were you? So where you've got a marshland or a bog or a swamp, and you've got all plants and things rotting down into that bog, sometimes it releases bubbles of gas, bubbles of methane gas, which can occasionally spontaneously ignite. And you get a kind of a strange flickering bluey-green flame over the marshland. Now, for hundreds, thousands of years, perhaps, people didn't know it was, spontaneously igniting methane released from decomposing vegetation. So they thought, as you would think, must be fairies. Must be fairies out there with their weird little false flames trying to lure us out into the marshland, trying to steal our souls away. And so this is the idea that I used in Sisters of the Lost Marsh, this idea that there is the Marsh King, and he has a false flame, and he's trying to lure lost souls out into the marshland so they'll be drowned in the thick slime of the swamp. And the mermaid in the mill pond uses folklore too. Now, weirdly, for me, because this never happens, I had the title of this book long before I had anything else. So that never happens. I had the title. It was going to be a poem, actually. And then Barrington Stoke came to me and they said, have you got an idea for a story? It needs to be a small idea, like an idea that will fit into 7,000 or 8,000 words. Don't try and cram like a whole novel in. Have you got a small idea? And I was like, I've got an idea. I've got a title. So I had this idea of the mermaid in the mill pond. And I knew I didn't want it to be like a Disney mermaid. So I didn't want a kind of, a beautiful girl sitting on a rock, combing her hair, singing, oh, my handsome prince, he's so handsome, how I love him, I want to be a human, and all that kind of stuff. So I knew I didn't want that kind of mermaid. So I went digging through folklore, and I discovered that in Irish mythology, they have these brilliant creatures called merrows. And merrows are these vicious little fairy fish people with kind of pointy claws and webbed fingers and sharp teeth. And they're predatory, they're like bloodthirsty, like kind of pike or shark or something like that. And I thought, that's my girl. That's the kind of mermaid I want in this story. So my mermaid in The Mermaid in the Mill Pond is probably technically a bit more of a merrow. So we're going to have a little bit of story time. Is that all right with everyone? I'm going to read you a little bit of this story, if I can find the right bit. So I'm going to read you a little bit of Sisters of the Lost Marsh. Now, at this point in the story, Willa is crossing the most dangerous part of the marshland, Sorrowmire. And she is going on this very, very dangerous journey to try to find her sister Grace, her oldest sister, who has disappeared from their village. And she disappeared the same night that the full moon fair left their village. So Willa has been tracking the full moon fair across the marshes, and she's hoping to find Grace. But she is not alone. She's being followed by her father, Dada, she calls him. He's not very nice, remember. And by a man called Silas Kirby. And Silas Kirby believes that he owns Grace because her father promised her to him in marriage. And so Silas Kirby and Dada are following across the Lost Marshes. Oh, and also Willa stole his horse. So that's also why they're following her, to get Flint, the horse, back. Are we sitting comfortably? It is almost dawn by the time we reach Sorrowmire. The darkness is beginning to wane now, but a thick white fog swirls over the lowland before us. The path forks here, left to stay on the main track that skirts the edge of the mire, or straight on to cut across the middle of it. I turn Flint left, but then I stop. There is a noise on the road behind us, clopping hooves, low voices, just distant echoes dulled by the thick, damp air of the mire. I can only hear the tone of their voices, not their words, but I know by the tightening of my gut that it is Dada and Silas. They can only have stopped briefly at the inn if they are so close behind us. I can't let them catch up with me. I can't let them find Grace before I do. Suddenly, I am turning Flint around, abandoning the safe winding track to the left and sliding down the muddy path that leads straight out onto the mire. They'll be sure to take the longer, safer path. This way, we'll beat them to Gallows End. My heart is beating all shuddery and fast. The fog is thicker than I thought. Just a bit of mizzle, Flint, I murmur. It'll clear as the sun rises. Flint seems unsure. He stops and tries to turn back. He whinnies nervously. Hush, boy, I whisper, praying Silas and Dada didn't hear him. It's all right, this way. And I pull him back around. We set off once more. The ground is sodden, slurping, sucking. I'm trying not to think about my promise to Sarah or about her Dada, who disappeared crossing Sorrowmire. I'm ignoring the words of Mama in my head. Beware the dangers of the marsh, my darlings, beware the mire. I'm shutting out the voices of all the elders back home. Never set foot on the mire in the dark, children. Never cross the mire alone. Never, ever set out in the fog. We have been told time and time again about the many ways in which the mire will try to kill us. Sometimes the truth and sometimes fairy tales all jumbled up together to scare us into being sensible. Here, on the reeking mire, with the strange fog wreathing around me, the fairy tales feel more real than ever before. The rolling coil of an eel in the mud becomes the tail of a bloodthirsty marsh mermaid. Even the smallest black puddle becomes the hidey hole of a bog troll, deep enough to swallow up a horse, leaving no trace but a few thick filmed bubbles popping on the surface. It goes strangely quiet. I can't hear Dada or Silas at all. There is an odd light ahead of me, a soft glimmer through the fog. Could it be the sunrise? Or a cottage on the far side of the mire? It is a faint pink lustre. A marsh fire, perhaps, a will-o'-the-wisp, but it looks like a flickering lantern. The Marsh King's lantern, whispers my fever-fuddled brain. The mire swims before my eyes. There is a dull thudding in my temples, and my hands are shaking so hard I can barely grip the reins. I am thinking about all the people who must have died in this mire, lost and frightened, taking just one wrong step and then sinking down, down, drowning in that cold, stinking slop. Flint starts suddenly, rearing up from the narrow path and skittering about. I grip the front of the saddle to stay seated. What is it, boy? An eel? But when I look down into the black water at Flint's feet, my heart starts skittering too. Faces. There are faces beneath the water. Corpses staring up at me with terrible blank eyes. An old man, a girl, a warrior with a paint-striped face. Animals too. I can see a fox, a buzzard, all lifeless, floating here beneath the surface of the swamp. There we go. A little scary bit to start our day. Now, another ingredient that you could use in your stories is something that I think is there in all the stories that we love. When a story really speaks to you, and it's the sort of story that you hold close to your heart, the sort of story you want to press into the hands of the people that you like and say, you must read this, you must read this. Those sorts of stories tend to have big ideas in them, big universal ideas that have spoken to you. And when you think about planning your own stories, very often, I think we think about plot, don't we? We think about structure. We think, my story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. What's going to happen in it? And of course, you need that. You need that plot. But I would encourage you also to think about something else. I want you to think about this. What's a big idea in this story? What's at the heart of my story? And when we're talking about big ideas, we're talking about things like family, or friendship, or love, or hate, or fear. A big idea, a big abstract noun like that, a big idea. And the big idea in Sisters of the Lost Marsh is this. We want to be druv. We won't be driven. We won't be controlled by people who do not have our best interests at heart. We want to be druv. We won't be driven. And this is my last, we're going to go to questions in a minute, by the way, so you can get ready with some really, really good questions to ask me. But before we do that, I just want to leave you with this final writing tip. And it's a sneaky peek into my own creative writing process. So remember I mentioned images, photographs, paintings. When I'm working on a new story, I always create one of these, a mood board. It's a bit like a collage. So images from all those, the folklore, the fairy tales, images from history or my historical research perhaps, the artwork, the paintings, the drawings, the photographs that I've been using. I gather them all together to create a sort of collage of my world, the world of my story. And I think when you read a good book, and you love it, a few weeks, a few months, a few years down the line, you don't remember everything that happened in that story. You forget all the ins and outs of the plot, unless there's a really big twist. But you tend to forget most of the stuff that happens in the story. But I think when you love a book, you will always remember how you felt reading that book. And so I think the mood, the tone, the atmosphere of a story is something really, really precious and really, really important to get it right. And a mood board can help you to do that. So this is the mood board for Sisters of the Lost Marsh. So we've got lots of kind of darkness, a fairy tale feel to it. We've got kind of shadow puppets. We've got fire and earth tones as well. Colour, it can be really useful for colour. Thinking about the aesthetic of your world. The aesthetic means like the visual feel of your world. This is my mood board for the Ghost of Goswater. So really, really different. And you can see I've kind of gathered some of the icons of the story. And the aesthetic is there too. So in the Ghost of Goswater, because it's a ghost story, we've got a lot of black and white, a lot of darkness and light, more darkness than light. So here we've got the white of the snow, the white of the ice, the white of the mist on the lake, the white of the gleaming white opal, the white of the ram's skull, the bone of the ram's skull here. And then we've got the darkness of the crumbling Gothic mansion, the darkness of the graveyard, the cemetery island, and the dark sheen of the raven's feathers too. So it helps to transport us into that world. And when you're working on a story in bits, one lesson at a time or one chunk at a time, having a mood board can really, really help to get you back into the right zone, the right world, to keep that continuity of the flavour, the feel of the story. And there's something else that it does too. And I think this is really, really important. Hands up if you've ever had feedback from your teacher that along the lines of, Could you add more detail here? Could you describe this a bit more? Can you use, what words can you think of to describe, to bring this to life? How can you help your reader to imagine this? You're being very honest, NLCS, well done. Yeah, absolutely. So it's something we get, yeah, fantastic. So this is something that we often aim for in our writing, isn't it? And it can be hard to do. Because if you're describing a snow-topped mountain, just from that idea, it's a snow-topped mountain, it's a pretty vague idea. And if something is vague in your head, it's only ever going to be vague on the page. What you can do if you've got an image to work from, a photograph or a piece of artwork to work from, then is you can look at that and you can allow yourself to notice everything. Writers are noticers. Good writers are good noticers. You can notice the details in there. And then, ladies and gentlemen, then you can do what is really the proper job of a writer. You can challenge yourself to find the perfect words to pin it down on the page. Because that's what we do. That's what writers do. We find the perfect words to pin something down on the page. And then you're looking into, very specifically, you're challenging yourself to say, so what words am I going to use? How am I going to describe those shimmering rainbows of colour that are there within the opal? How am I going to describe the way the light is catching the raven's feathers? How am I going to describe the way the sun is kind of glowing through that snow, the snow that's been lifted by the wind? What are the right words? What are the right words to pin that down on the page? And that's when you're being proper writers. Okay. Right. We've got, I reckon, about 10 minutes. About 10 minutes? Someone nod at me. About 10 minutes. About 10 minutes. And you can ask me anything you like. After this, by the way, if you'd like to come and say hi, we're going to be signing some books over there. Just around this corner. Other side of this big what's it. But before that, yes, 10 minutes of questions. Who's going to ask me something? And it's not, is that your real name? Could we have, we've got some roving mics, lovely. Do you want to pick this gentleman at the back? They're lovely, thank you.
How long have you been doing writing for?
How long have I been doing writing for? So probably about something like 12 years trying to do it professionally, something like that. About 12 years trying to do it professionally. But then my first book, Secret of Nightingale Wood, came out in 2016. So that's, about 7 years or so that I've been doing that. I do think writing is a sort of job you can come to at any time in your life. And in a way, the more life experience you have, the better writer you will be. A writer that I love describes life experience for writers is like compost. So you don't take your life experiences and stick them in your stories. It's more subtle than that. What you do, that you use your life experience as compost to grow the seeds of your ideas into something alive within your story. Okay, yeah, let's go over here. Hi. Did you have a turn before? Oh, go on then. And then we'll pick someone else, yeah. Hi.
When do you think you're going to make your next book?
When's my next book coming out? So, okay. Thank you for asking that. So this summer, my next Barrington Stoke book is coming out, and that's called The Storm and the Minotaur. And it's a kind of legendy adventure set in a coal mine. And it's got a boy as a main character, so it's my first time with doing a boy as a main character. And another book I'm working on at the moment has got a boy as a main character too. So boys, you need to read these for me, please, and just say yes. Yes, that's fine, you got it, Lucy Strange. Or no, one or the other. And then next year, I've had a bit of a pause actually, but next year I've got 3 books coming out. So next year will be my next big Chicken House novel, which we think is going to be called The Island of Whispers, which is set on a Scottish island in a school for children who've been told they are wicked. And that's why they've been sent away to this school on a remote Scottish island. And I have got another Barrington Stoke book, which is about a chimney sweep. And I have got a new series, which is a supernatural mystery series, and they're a bit lighter, they're a bit funnier. And that's starting next year, and those are going to be called the Lockett and Wild Dreadfully Haunting Mysteries. And they're 1930s supernatural mystery stories. So that's what's next. Okay, have we got someone? Have we pick someone over here, this lady here, please.
When you write your books, do you like think of yourself as the main character?
Yeah, I do. I think of myself as all my characters. And I think maybe it's possibly, but I bring some of my acting into it as well. So when I'm writing, I'm always thinking about what feels authentic, because even when we're making stuff up, it has to feel truthful, doesn't it? It has to feel truthful for our readers. So I'm always thinking about what feels authentic when I'm writing dialogue, when I'm writing my conversations. What would I want to say at that point? How would I say it? What words would come out? And I'm thinking physically as well. I'm thinking, how does that feel? How does that feel in my gut when someone says that or does that? What am I feeling in my gut? What's my heart doing? I'm thinking about facial expressions of the other characters as well. Be careful about, if you're writing in the first person, you don't describe the facial expression of your main character, because you're not looking at your own face, are you? You're looking at other people's faces. So what are other people's faces doing? And thinking about all the things that your character would naturally observe in those situations. But yeah, so I live, and I have to be quite careful about writing on trains and in public, because I sort of pull all sorts of faces and my body's doing strange things. And I sometimes cry when I'm writing sad bits as well. And I've actually made myself laugh too, which is also a good sign. I think it's probably a good sign. Okay. Yeah, so we have some questions from around the front, please. From over here. Well, actually, have you had a turn? No, let's go to this lady then. Yeah, hi.
Who has guided you through your writing journey?
Oh, a lovely question. Who has guided me through my writing journey? Well, I think the writers that I love, so the stories that I love. So remember what I said about The Secret Garden? They've kind of given me maps or blueprints, if you like, of the sorts of stories that I want to write. And then when you're writing, it's an interesting thing as an art form, because you do always work with other people. It is collaborative. So I work with my agent, and we discuss ideas for stories, and we discuss what, not just what's going to be a good story, but the sorts of stories that people might want to read as well. And we discuss what's happening in the market and what you guys might want, which is mainly gory horror, I'm guessing, from our conversations today. Okay. You want gory horror with scary monkey bat people. So you work with your agent, you work with your editor at the publisher, and I've had a long and wonderful friendship now with my editor Rachel at Chicken House Books, and we have long conversations. When I send off a manuscript, we'll then talk on the phone or in person for 2 or 3 hours, like thrashing through the story and working out what we need to do, what we need to change, how to make it better, the interacting with you guys, that always gives me a great deal of a lot of ideas, and working with illustrators as well. So the new series that I mentioned next year, the kind of comedy supernatural mystery series, that's going to be fully illustrated by the brilliant illustrator and author Pam Smye, and she did the front cover, she did the mermaid and the mill pond illustrations. So that's a collaboration, and it's very nice to collaborate, because actually writing can be quite lonely. I think that's why I miss the gossip in the staff room, because you're by yourself a lot of the time. It's just you in your own little world, in your pajamas, in my writing shed, and it's just me and my laptop and my ideas, and then I kind of have to, and then this happens, and I go, hello world. Hello, people. Yeah, okay, let's have another one. Oh, we got to wrap up. You can ask me things. Come and see me in a minute. You can ask me things. So I just want to say thank you so much. You've been an absolutely beautiful audience. Thank you so much for all your fabulous feedback and ideas and questions. And thank you. Bye. See you in a minute. Bye. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mom.
So if you have any questions left, you can get the books and have them signed and ask all your questions to Mrs. Lucy. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank your teachers for bringing you. Also, we want to thank the Abu Dhabi Book Fair for arranging this, the AV team and the hosts who were helping us through this session. And that's all. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.